Hey guys, how's it going? Brandon here, and today we're talking about bass situational habits, feeding habits around certain structures, wood, rock, vegetation, how they react, how they set up, and some of my bait choices that I like to use in certain situations around certain cover. Let's get into it. Okay, so the first category I want to talk about is rock. Quickly, the benefits of rock. They hold crawfish and bait fish, provide shade, and it helps bass ambush prey because they can sit behind the rock. Like in these examples, those bass can slide out and grab the bait as it comes by, kind of playing that hide and seek game that I've mentioned before. Think about it in this scenario here. You're casting up to the bank and you bring your bait by one of those rocks, banging it off the rock, triggering that fish to eat, or basically surprising it as it comes by so we can ambush it. So bass in calm conditions or around rock, they're going to sit more on the shade of the rock. It becomes really important. And when you don't have wind in the summertime, water gets pretty warm, so they want that cooler water from that shade of that rock. They're typically going to slide off if it's calmer, just depending on water clarity, because in the summertime, that water can really warm up and get hot and warms up those rocks even more, because rocks will hold heat. So in that calmer conditions, they're going to slide a little bit deeper or in the real thick shade of a rock. And crawdad really love rock. They crawl around and go rock to rock. Bass can feed up on crawfish in those rocks, so rock is always going to hold bass. So another note, bass will always like to face the structure. So if it's a rock, whatever it is, they're going to be nosed up to it. Think about when if you're to throw a ball against a wall, if you're standing like this against it and the ball bounces off the wall, you can easily catch it and trap it against the wall. If your back is to the wall and somebody throws a ball over your head, it's really hard to be able to catch it once that ball comes back over your head. So think about it like that. And another thing you can look at if you go to Bass Pro, look at some of the bass. They'll be right nosed against the wall, waiting for a bait to fall down or to bang off that wall to trap it. That's just how they set up and how they relate to cover. So when rock really benefits is in windy conditions. When the wind blows, it basically forces bait into those rocks. The bait's getting kind of pushed against the rock. It's moving around the rock because of the wind. Is just causing the bait to either be pushed or swim around more, basically providing the meal to the bass. So the bass they don't have to move as much around. It positions those bass behind rocks and where they can just really wait until that bait gets pushed by them to eat. A few baits I like and kind of the different depths are square bill crankbaits. Really, if you have wind, it's a hard bait to be around rock. It just deflects off that rock so well. It creates those reaction strikes, imitates either a crawfish or a shad, depending on the color of square bill you have. It's just a great bait when you have wind. Wind is kind of the key for that bait. Another good bait in the summertime for rock is a paddle tail swim bait. It's a natural bait, especially if you're in clear water. It imitates a shad or bait fish, a bluegill, depending on what your forage is there. It's just a natural presentation. Even if you have deeper rock, maybe that's not big rock like this, smaller rock across the bottom, it allows you to just to bump that bait along the bottom where bass are already going to be, because they're going to be down as deep as they can get to be around that shade. And it gets a lot of bites. And then a hard one to beat in all conditions is a Texas rig worm or creature bait of some sort, because you can work it down through those rocks. It's good in calm conditions or windy conditions. It doesn't get hung up because the Texas rig is weedless. Yeah, you can get hung up at rock, you can get hung up at anything, but it's just a subtle presentation that's always going to catch bass of any size. Okay, the next category I'm going to talk about is vegetation. And the benefits of vegetation is it oxygenates the water. And because it oxygenates the water, it provides a lot of aquatic life, lots of bugs, lots of different things in that water with that grass. A lot of things just live in grass, on grass, all that kind of benefits to it. And depending on how much vegetation you have, it can put out a lot of shade. Similar to my other example, it creates that ambush spots, but those bass can slide up behind the grass, slide out and feed. They can get in the hydrilla or milfoil, whatever it is, in the grass and feed when things fall into it or swim by it. It just provides so much room for them to hide and ambush prey. So summertime, shallow vegetation, it's always going to hold bass just because of that shade. But when you have calm conditions, they're going to sit in the shadiest part of the grass, whatever it is, grass, lily pads, cattails. They're going to be close to it, tight to it, in it, to get that shade and basically hide and get that comfort. The lower the temperature is, or the clearer the water, typically they're going to sit down deeper in it than they would get up higher. So when you get wind in grass, depending on how much wind, you get a little wind, that's going to help even more. You get a lot of wind, and like I said before, they don't want to be in that stuff. It's just, there's too much moving. It's not a solid structure. They want to be against something solid. So they're going to slide out a little bit. They're going to push out. They're going to be around that grass always because they love to be around grass because of all the life it provides. But they may slide out a little bit to get kind of off the edge of it and not right on it, or slide to something that's harder that's near the grass. In some of your lakes, grass can grow, depending on the clarity, it can grow pretty deep. So you can get that deep hydrilla, which is the best of both worlds for bass because they can get deep. And then if you have wind, they basically can just slide up out of it a little bit and feed through the tops of it. Or they can stay really in it because depending on the depth, the wind may not affect the grass that much. So, but if you do have wind, it kind of can move them around. They can go up into that shallow or near that shallow grass and feed, or they can stay deeper and stay where they're at. So there's a lot of benefits to deep and shallow vegetation in your lake. And with when you get lily pads, bass can sit up just depending on their mood, the conditions. They can slide up and down that kind of stem. They can sit right up underneath the pad. So when your frog goes right by it, they can quickly grab it. They may slide back down if you got a lot of wind and sit next to the root of that. Typically lily pad roots are a little bit thicker and stronger, so they don't move as much. But they can slide down and sit in the more of the shade. Just kind of depends on the lake, and that's something you just kind of got to find out as you fish it. One of the best baits, in my opinion, in vegetation is a frog. There isn't a bad time to fish a frog in the summertime, especially if you have a lot of vegetation. It's weedless because it can come through it. It's not going to get hung up on anything. And it's a great bait to just start with. Just kind of search around and see if there's a certain activity in one area over another, and it works just at all times of day. Another good bait is a weedless swim bait. So where the hook is actually in the body of the swim bait, and it allows you to bring it through that grass. You're not gonna want to swim this through real thick grass. It's gonna get stuff all over it, but sparse grass or milfoil that's kind of thinned out just imitates a bait fish or a bluegill swimming through that grass, and it's natural, especially in that clear water that you typically get a lot of times in vegetation. You need something natural. Also, another benefit to it is you can control the depth. And again, another good bait is a Texas rig again, because you can work it slowly down through the grass. You can drop it through the holes and get a lot of bites, both big and small. So with grass, even if you can't see the holes, you got grass down there on the bottom and your bait falls into those holes, those openings. Well, those bass are swimming around in those openings. They might not be stuck in the thick of that grass. They may be kind of in those holes, and when that bait's falling, they almost have no choice but to grab it. They're just going to react. That's kind of how they are. It's like same thing with throwing that ball against a wall. It forces them to have to grab it because it's dropping down right where they're at. So that's something to think about when you're fishing deeper grasses. Letting that bait fall down and just constantly working it through that grass. Okay, so the last category I want to talk about is shallow wood. The benefits of wood, it's good in all conditions, really. It provides shade and it helps bass ambush prey. Similar to rock, but the benefit of wood over rock is wood doesn't really heat up like rock does and keep them away. It really just all year round, bass are always going to be attracted to laydowns, wood, timber of some sort. And again, it just allows them to slide out and feed. You can drop, if a bait drops down, so you got a Texas rig worm drops down next to that log, bass can eat it there. If it's windy, you can bring that crankbait and bang it off the log, and there's just several benefits of wood. Okay, so in calm conditions in the summertime, bass are really going to want to get deep in the shade of that wood, those laydowns. They want to get under stuff. Kind of makes it hard for them to get to, but they really want to sit tight or really deep in that cover. It just provides the coolest water and shields their eyes from the sunlight. Introduce wind, it does the same thing as it does with rock. It basically forces that bait, it pushes that bait up against the bank, it bangs it off the structure, the timber, the laydowns. Bass can then sit behind the timber or in the laydown and let the bait kind of come to it. Bass will also slide up a little bit more where they don't have to be as in deep of the cover because they have that wind kind of cooling the water and breaking up the sunlight penetration. So wind in the summertime, you got to think of like AC with us. When it's really hot outside, we're going to go inside our house, inside the structure to stay cool. We're not going to go outside as much. The same thing with bass. With that wind, it almost turns on an air conditioner. They're going to get away from their house. They're going to go outside of their house and kind of roam around that structure. They may still stay close to that structure, but they're going to get out away from it. But when it's hot, there's no wind, no breeze, no current. They're going to get real tight. They're going to go inside their house. A couple of baits I like around wood are, again, square bill crankbaits. And it's, again, you has to be in wood. Square bill is just a very versatile around wood and rock. You're not going to want to throw it into a laydown. Obviously, they're just hard to get it through that. But like, it's really good banging it off stumps up shallow, or even if you have a tree up shallow, bringing it over one of the root arms of that stump if it's in shallow enough water. It just, again, imitates crawfish, shad. It gets those reaction strikes, and it's good around that wood, that timber. Another good bait is a popping style topwater, because you can throw this bait up in that laydown or close to that laydown, not in the laydown, and pop it in place without moving it away from the laydown and giving that bass plenty of time to come up and eat it, kind of aggravating that bass. You do want to throw a popping style bait or a topwater of any sort in low light conditions or in shade. It's not going to be a bright sunny day type of thing in the summer. And then again, a great bait around wood is a Texas rig soft plastic. Not necessarily a worm. A worm works good, but a Texas rig creature style bait. Really just a Texas rig anything, because it's weedless. You can drop it down through the cover and find those bass that are kind of hidden down in it. You can bump it over the roots at the very bottom. You can kind of drag it around those logs and slowly kind of finesse your way through that cover where those bass are likely to be. All right, guys, I hope that gave you a little more insight on how bass feed around certain structure. If you haven't already, check out some of my other videos that are very similar to this and give you a little more insight, ultimately help you catch more fish. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.